My name is Claire Bennett. I was 30 years old on December 20th, 2024, the night I drove home to Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and found the house dark and the driveway empty and every single person in my family gone, except one. Grandpa Walter was sitting in the front room in the wooden chair he'd built himself in 1979, the one with the arm he'd repaired twice with wood glue and a C-clamp instead of buying a new chair. The lamp beside him wasn't on. The only light in that room came from the fireplace, and he was just sitting there in it, hands on his knees, looking at the door like he'd been looking at it for hours, and had all the patience in the world to keep looking. On the kitchen counter there was a note. Not a phone call I could answer. Not a question I could say no to. A note, in my mother's handwriting, on the back of a grocery receipt. Claire. Dad, Trevor, and I are in Japan until the 2nd. You stay with Grandpa. Pills are in the cabinet. Don't let him drive. That was the whole thing. 24 words. I counted them later, sitting on the floor of my old bedroom, because counting was the only thing my brain could do. Nobody asked whether I could take the time. Nobody remembered that I'd worked 14 night shifts in a row at St. Albans Rehabilitation to clear that week, or that I'd traded away my Thanksgiving to do it, or that I'd told my mother about it twice on the phone and she'd said both times while doing something else. I looked at Grandpa. He was 83. His glasses were the same wire frames he'd had since I was in high school, and behind them his eyes were completely steady, and he looked at me like a man who had been waiting a very long time for a train and had just heard the whistle. Well, he said, you're here. I'm here. Good. He nodded once, slow. Then we can start. I didn't know what he meant. I said okay anyway, because that's what I always said. 12 days later, my family walked back through that door with duty-free bags and sunburned noses, and 40 minutes after that, my mother was on her knees on the living room rug screaming my name. But I'm getting ahead of it. Let me back up, because this didn't start in December. It started years before that, and it started so quietly I didn't even notice it was starting. The first one I remember clearly was Thanksgiving of 2021. I was 27. I'd been at St. Albans for 3 years by then, working nights on the respiratory floor, and I'd put in for the holiday week back in August, 3 months ahead. 2 friends from nursing school and I had rented a cabin outside Hocking Hills. $420, split 3 ways, non-refundable after November 1st. My mother called me on November 14th at 6:40 in the evening. I'd been asleep 4 hours after a 12-hour shift, and my voice still sounded like gravel when I picked up. Claire, we're going to Charleston for Thanksgiving, she said. No hello. She never opened with hello. Grandpa's been coughing, somebody has to be with him, and you're the one with the training. I said I had the cabin. She said the cabin would still be there in the spring. I said the cabin was rented. She said, Claire, in that voice, the one that meant the conversation was already finished, and I was just being slow about noticing. They left on November 23rd, 4 nights at a place on the Battery with a courtyard and a fig tree, and my mother posted 11 photographs of that fig tree. 11. I lost my cabin deposit, and I gave 3 shifts back to the scheduler, and I sat in Grandpa's kitchen on Thanksgiving Day, feeding him mashed potatoes he did not need help eating, because the cough was a cough, and it was gone in 36 hours. That afternoon, my aunt commented on my mother's photo. Where's Claire? My mother answered in under 2 minutes. She's home with Dad. Somebody has to be responsible. I read that word for a long time. Responsible, like it was a compliment, like being the one nobody consults is a character trait you should be proud of. I didn't say anything. I never said anything. Then there was June of 2023. My father turned 58, and my brother booked 8 days at a resort in Sedona for the 4 of them. 2 casitas. I found out about it in the family group chat, where Trevor posted a screenshot of the reservation with a sunglasses emoji. I typed, 2 rooms is 4 people. Am I in the 4? My mother wrote back 9 minutes later. Grandpa has his eye injection on the 12th. Someone has to drive him, and you're off that week anyway. I was off that week because I had asked to be off that week. I had a rock climbing trip planned with a coworker. I had bought the shoes. The eye injection took 19 minutes. 19. I drove him there, sat in a waiting room with a Field and Stream from 2019, drove him home, and then had 8 days and nothing to fill them with and nobody who thought to call and say, hey, there's a seat on the flight. I watched Trevor's stories instead, my father on a red rock at sunset with his arms out. Caption, the man, the myth, 58, 41 likes. I canceled the climbing trip. My coworker went with someone else. We're friendly now, but we're not friends, and I know exactly which week that changed. But the one that still gets me, the one I think about at red lights, was March 2024. My best friend from nursing school, Priya, was getting married in Charleston. I was standing up in it. I had the dress, a dark green thing that cost me $280 and needed $110 in alterations because I'm short-waisted. I'd had it for 5 months. It was hanging on the back of my bedroom door where I could see it every night. 10 days before the wedding, my father cleared his throat at dinner. He does that when he's about to hand you something he's already decided. Claire, the Rothman thing is the same weekend. The Rothmans. My father is a controller at a mid-sized logistics company, and Rothman is the man who signs things. His son was getting married, and we had 3 seats. Trevor should take the third, my father said, cutting his chicken. He's got a shot at the Cleveland office through those people. I said I was in a wedding. I said I'd been in it for 8 months. My mother didn't look up from her plate. Tell Priya your grandfather's not well. She'll understand. He is well. She doesn't have to know that. I called Priya at 11 at night, 10 days before her wedding, and I lied to my best friend. I told her a story about my grandfather that wasn't true, and she said, "Oh, Claire, of course." And she meant it, and that made it so much worse. She got someone else. Her cousin. There's a photo of all of them on the beach, and there's a green dress in it that isn't mine. Grandpa asked me the next week why I wasn't at the wedding. I told him work. He looked at me for about 4 seconds too long and said, and went back to whatever he was sanding. I found out later he'd been fishing that weekend. My mother had told him the same lies she told me to tell. 3 times in 3 years, and every time I folded up the hurt like a hospital corner and put it away, because that's what you do when you've been trained since you were 9 to be the one who's fine. The call came on December 19th, 2024, at 7:02 in the morning. I know because I just badged out from a 14th consecutive night, and I was sitting in my Corolla in the parking structure with my head against the seat, too tired to turn the key. Claire, flat, businesslike. Hey, Mom. We're going to Japan tomorrow, the 20th to the 2nd. You'll need to be at the house. I sat up. My spine actually made a sound. Japan, for Christmas. Tokyo, Kyoto, then a few days in Hakone. It's booked, Claire. It's been booked since August. Since August, the same month I put in for the week. Mom, I worked 14 nights in a row for this week. You're a respiratory therapist. Taking care of people is what you do. A pause, and then softer, in the voice she uses when she wants something to sound reasonable. He's 83, honey. He can't be alone at Christmas. Neither can I. I don't know where that came from. It just came out. There was a silence about 2 seconds long. Then she said, "Don't be dramatic," and hung up. 1 minute, 51 seconds. I checked later. That's what it costs to take somebody's Christmas. I sat in that parking structure until the light through the concrete slats turned from gray to slightly less gray. I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that, because people expect the crying and I didn't do it. What I felt was more like a room going quiet, like the last person had left and the door had clicked, and now it was just me and the furniture. I drove up the next evening, 41 minutes on I-271, and the sky was already black by 6 because December in Ohio doesn't fool around. 26 degrees. The driveway was empty. My father's Acura, gone. My mother's Highlander, gone. Trevor's Charger, which he'd driven up from Columbus and left, gone. But the chimney was going, smoke in the porch light. Inside, one room lit, one man in it. I said hello. He said hello, Claire. I asked where everybody was, and he said, "Airport at 4 this morning. Your brother wanted to get breakfast at the terminal." I went to the kitchen and found the receipt with the 24 words on it. I read it maybe 6 times. Then I opened the refrigerator, 3 chicken thighs, a bag of frozen peas, 4 eggs, half a jar of applesauce, and a heel of bread. 12 days of instructions and about 4 days of food. I folded the note. I didn't crumple it. I want you to know that. I folded it along the lines it already had, and I put it in my coat pocket, and I stood there with my hand on the refrigerator door for a while. When I came back in, Grandpa was watching me. Not with pity. That's the thing I keep coming back to. There was no pity in it at all. He was looking at me the way he used to look at a piece of stock on the lathe, deciding what was in there. "Sit down," he said. I sat. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you angry?" I laughed. It came out wrong. "At what?" "At them." "I'm used to it," I said. He nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something for him, and he said, "Good, then we can start." "Start what?" "Go to bed," he said. "You've been up all night twice this week." 3 times, actually. I went upstairs. My old room hadn't changed. Same twin bed, same bookshelf, same water stain on the ceiling shaped like Michigan, and on the desk, propped against the lamp, a white envelope with my name on it in his handwriting, which slants uphill because he broke that wrist in 1968. Underneath the name he'd written, "Open the 24th, not before." I picked it up. Something stiff inside, about the size of a check. I put it back down. I lay awake a long time. I woke at 5:50 the next morning because 14 nights of nights doesn't wash out in one day, and when I came down he was already at the kitchen table with a coffee grinder in about 9 pieces. "You're up," I said. "I'm always up. 6 hours is plenty." The grinder was a Braun from probably 1994. It had stopped working in October, and my father had said twice he'd get a new one. "What's wrong with it?" "Carbon brush is worn." He held up something the size of a pencil eraser. $1.40. Your dad wanted to buy a $60 one. Why not let him? He looked up at me over the glasses. Really looked, the way he had the night before. Why would you throw out something that still works? He went back to the brushes. I stood there in the doorway with the distinct feeling that we had not been talking about a coffee grinder. That was day 1, and we found a rhythm fast. 7 a.m., his pills. Metformin, lisinopril, a statin, a baby aspirin, and a vitamin D his doctor put him on in 2022 that I'm fairly sure does nothing. I checked his sugar, 114. I took his pressure with the cuff from his bedroom drawer, 130/78, and I wrote all of it down in the little notebook I carry, because at work you document everything or it didn't happen. He noticed the notebook on the second morning. "You write a lot." "Habit. They're lucky to have you." He set it into his coffee, not to me. I made eggs. We ate. And then he said, "Tell me about your work." Nobody asks me that. I want to be clear about how strange that sentence was in that kitchen. My father has asked me about my job one time in 9 years, at my graduation, and the question was whether I'd thought about applying to PA school instead. "It's not interesting," I said. "Try me." So I told him. I told him about the floor, about the tracks and the weans, about sitting with a man for 6 hours while we brought him down off the vent an hour at a time, about how the loudest thing on that unit at 3 in the morning is the alarms, and the second loudest is people breathing. I told him about a woman named Doris who was on my unit for 9 weeks, and how the last thing she did before she went was pat my hand twice like she was the one comforting me. He didn't interrupt once. When I ran out, he was quiet, and then he asked, "Why that, out of everything?" I put my fork down. Nobody had ever asked me that either. "Because people disappear before they die," I said. "Everybody looks away. Somebody should be looking at them." He didn't answer, but his hand on the table closed, slow, into a fist, and then opened again. Day 3, he asked me what my father says about the work. "Nothing." "Your mother?" "She says she's proud." I shrugged. "She usually adds something after it." "Like what?" "Like, even though you could have done so much more." He set his coffee down hard enough that it sloshed. "And Trevor?" "Trevor doesn't ask about anything that isn't Trevor." He looked at his plate for a long time. Then he said quietly, "They don't deserve you." I changed the subject. I asked if he wanted more toast. Day 4, I found out about the properties, not the money, just the shape of the life. "What did you actually do?" I asked. "Before you retired, I know it was the shop. Bennett Tool and Die, he said. Akron. Opened it in 1971 with $11,000 I borrowed off a man named Sal Petrosino who never once asked for a payment schedule. He smiled at the ceiling. Ran it 31 years. That's it? That's the part people know. He rocked once. Around 78 I started buying the buildings nobody wanted. Laundromats mostly. Ugly little cinder block things on corners. Nobody wants a laundromat, Claire. Everybody needs one. How many? 22 at the top, plus 4 storage yards in Barberton. What happened to them? Sold. Between 2011 and 2016. Market was good. He said it the way you'd say you'd cleaned out a garage. I didn't think about it. I want you to understand that. The man drove a 2006 Camry with 210,000 miles on it. He had 3 flannel shirts. He had a television with a picture tube in it. I assumed he had a couple $100,000 in a credit union somewhere in a paid-off house, and I was glad for him, and that was the whole extent of my thinking about my grandfather's money. On day 5, December 24th's Eve, we were in the front room. I was knitting a hat for one of my patients, a guy named Curtis, who lost his hair to chemo and complained constantly that his head was cold. Grandpa was watching Wheel of Fortune on the picture tube. At 7:20, he muted it. He had never muted it in my entire life. Wheel of Fortune is a sacrament in that house. Claire, are you happy? The needles stopped. Why are you asking me that? Because I've been watching you for 5 days and you haven't complained once. They left you here at Christmas with a note and half a chicken and you didn't say a word about it. You just started cooking. I'm used to it. Being used to a thing doesn't make it right. I looked down at the yarn. I don't really know what happy is anymore, I said. I know what fine is. He nodded. He didn't try to fix it, which I appreciated more than he could know. He just said, tomorrow, open the envelope, then come down and ask me anything you want and I'll answer all of it, straight. What's in it? Tomorrow. He unmuted the television. Then, over the applause, without looking at me, he said, you're going to understand why I'm not leaving any of it to them. I said, leaving what? He turned the volume up. I want to tell you about day 4 actually because I skipped something. His office is a small room off the hall, maybe 10 by 12, and it has been locked my entire life. Not in a scary way, in an old man way. That's my room, don't go in there. Fine, nobody wanted to. On the morning of the 23rd, it was open about 4 inches. I stopped. Through the gap, I could see the corner of his desk, and on the desk, a manila envelope, the big kind, with a return address printed in the corner. Vance and Sheridan, attorneys at law, Chagrin Falls, and stamped across it in red, confidential. I took 1 step closer, which is 1 step further than I should have, and I could just read the top of the label. Last will and test. Claire. He was at the end of the hall with the newspaper under his arm. I said something stupid about wondering if he wanted the room dusted. I keep it tidy myself, he said, and walked past me into the kitchen, and then over his shoulder, mild as milk. That's just paperwork. That door had been locked for 30 years. It was open that morning. I've thought about it 100 times since, and I'm telling you he opened it on purpose. Later that day, I drove him to the retina specialist, and while he was back there, my phone rang from a number I didn't know. Is this Claire Bennett? Yes. Harold Vance. I represent your grandfather. My stomach went somewhere around my knees. Is he okay? He's perfectly fine. Smooth voice. Late 50s, I'd guess, and the kind of calm that costs money. He's asked me to come to the house on January 3rd at 10 in the morning, and he'd like you present. For what? I'm not able to get into it by phone. I can tell you it isn't bad news. Will you be there? I said yes, because what else do you say? When Grandpa came out, I said, a lawyer called me. I know. Why do you need me at a meeting? He stopped in the middle of the lobby, and people had to go around us, and he looked at me dead on. Because it's about you. Christmas Eve. I was up at 6 because my body had decided sleep was optional. I sat on the bed and opened the envelope. There was a check in it. $5,000 from a credit union in Akron, made out to Claire Elizabeth Bennett, dated December 16th, 2024. Under the check there was a letter, 2 pages, both sides, in that uphill handwriting. Claire. If you're reading this, it's the 24th, and you've been here 5 days, and you haven't asked me for anything, which is what I expected, and it's still remarkable to watch. I want you to know I've seen all of it. Thanksgiving in 2021, when they told you I was sick. I had a cough. I have had worse coughs from laughing. June of 2023, when they told you I needed a driver for an appointment that took 19 minutes. March of last year, when they took your friend's wedding away from you and made you lie about me to do it. I want you to know I found that out, and I sat in this chair for a long time. I didn't say anything then. I want to explain why, because you deserve the explanation and not the excuse. I said nothing because I had to be sure about you. Anybody can be good when somebody's watching. Anybody can be good when there's something in it. I needed to know what you were when there was nothing in it at all. Now I know. The check is yours. It's a Christmas present, not a payment, and I want you to spend it on something with no purpose whatsoever. Don't put it toward a bill. Don't give any of it to your brother. On the 3rd, Harold is coming to the house, and he's going to say some things that will land like a truck on the people in this family, and I want you to hear one of them from me first, in private, so it isn't a shock in a room full of shouting. I am not a poor man, Claire. I'm not comfortable. I'm not doing all right. I have more money than your father has ever imagined, and I'm leaving almost all of it to you. Not because you're my granddaughter. Trevor is my grandson, and he's getting a handshake. I'm leaving it to you because you are the only person carrying my last name who understands that taking care of somebody is not a job you take when you can't get a better one. They'll say I was confused. They'll say you worked on me. Let them. I've had 2 doctors put it in writing, and Claire, I'm not just giving you money. I'm giving you the say. You'll understand on the 3rd. I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you any of this. Grandpa, I read it 3 times. On the 3rd one, I finally came apart, and it wasn't sad, and it wasn't angry. It was more like when you've been holding a door shut with your shoulder for 9 years, and somebody on the other side finally stops pushing. Somebody had been looking at me the whole time. I went downstairs. He was in the chair with his coffee. You read it. I nodded. I couldn't talk yet. Ask. I got it out on the 2nd try. How much? He set the mug down. 17,000,004, give or take. Depends what the market did yesterday. I sat down on the floor. Not the couch. The floor. 17. The buildings went for about 4.5 after taxes. I put it in 3 index funds in 2011, and I have not touched it since. He shrugged. That's not genius, Claire. That's patience. Anybody can do it. Almost nobody does. You have a television from 1993. It works. Grandpa, money doesn't change a person, he said. It just turns the lights on and shows you what was already standing there. How much are you giving me? 12.5. The rest goes other places. Harold will walk you through it. They are going to lose their minds. Yes, he said, and he sounded almost cheerful about it. But here's what I want you to hear. I'm not giving you money. I'm giving you the decision. Your father, your mother, your brother, they're going to get one chance to earn something back, and you're the one who decides whether they've earned it. Me. You're the only one who knows what it cost. We had Christmas dinner that night, the 2 of us. Chicken thighs, the peas, mashed potatoes, and a pie I made out of the applesauce, and some cinnamon because it was that or nothing. $22 all in. We ate it with the fireplace going and the picture tube off. Meanwhile, 6,000 miles away, my family was having a different Christmas, and I know exactly what it looked like because they photographed all of it. December 21st, my mother posted from Shibuya. All 3 of them at that crossing with the lights going, arms around each other. Caption, our best Christmas yet, #family first. December 22nd, Trevor posted a bowl of something with a soft egg on top and about 9 hashtags. They were at a hotel in Ginza that runs about $600 a night, and they were in it for 5 nights, and I did that math at Grandpa's kitchen table while eating peas. December 24th, my father posted a photograph of a temple in Kyoto in the snow. It was genuinely beautiful. I want to be fair. It was the most beautiful photograph he's ever taken, and I stared at it for a long time. December 25th, Christmas Day, my mother posted the 3 of them at a kaiseki dinner. Little lacquer boxes, a private room, a woman in a kimono pouring something. Caption, Christmas dinner in Kyoto, blessed beyond measure. That one I looked at for a while. My aunt commented under it. Where's Claire? My mother answered in 4 minutes. Home with Dad. Someone has to be responsible. The same sentence, word for word, 3 years apart. She had a script. Grandpa saw me looking at my phone. What is it? Their Christmas dinner. Expensive? About $300 a head. He held out his hand and I gave him the phone, and he studied it for probably 30 seconds, which is a long time to look at a photograph. You know what's in this picture? He said. What? 3 people who need a receipt to feel like they're worth something. He handed it back. What did ours cost? $22. Were you happy? I looked around that room. The fire he'd built with wood, he'd split himself in October, the chair with the glued arm, the old man in the flannel. Yeah, I said. I was. There it is, he said. By my count, they spent somewhere north of $29,000 in 13 days, not counting the flights. I stopped adding it up around the 28th. It stopped meaning anything. I worked 144 hours in those 12 days. I didn't get paid for any of them. I didn't get thanked for any of them either, and I want to be precise about that, because when they came home on January 2nd at 11:40 at night, dragging suitcases across the pavement, exhausted and irritable from 13 hours in the air, here's the complete list of things anyone said to me. My mother walking in. Dad, we're back. Everything okay? My father dropping his bag. Is there beer? Trevor going past me to the refrigerator without looking up. God, I'm dead. And my mother sitting down across from Grandpa. Did he go to his appointment? He. Not you. He. I said yes. The 23rd. Everything's fine. Good, my father said from behind the refrigerator door. So it all went fine. That was it. 144 hours, and it all went fine. I dried my hands and went upstairs. Behind me, I heard my mother say something about someone coming at 10 in the morning, and Grandpa say the word lawyer, and my mother say, Dad, if it's the will, you don't need a whole production, and Grandpa say, 10 o'clock, everybody's here. She didn't push. She thought it was paperwork. Harold Vance arrived on January 3rd at 9:52, 8 minutes early, in a gray suit, carrying a leather case. I watched him park from my bedroom window. Downstairs, everyone was relaxed. My father in a fleece, my mother with coffee, Trevor on his phone with one ankle on his knee, Grandpa in the chair. Vance set the case on the coffee table and opened it. 4 folders, a laptop, a yellow pad. Thank you all for being here, he said, and my father said of course, and Trevor said, Grandpa, you didn't have to hire a guy for this. We're family, and grinned. Grandpa said, Sit down, Trevor. The grin went off Trevor's face like a light switch. Before we begin, Vance said, I'd note that this instrument was executed December 16th, 2024, and that Mr. Bennett was evaluated by 2 independent physicians on the 11th and the 13th, both of whom certified capacity in writing. He scored 29 of 30 on the standard exam. This document is sound. My mother shifted. Nobody's questioning that. Good, Vance said. He turned the laptop around. As of December 1st, 2024, the estate is valued at $17,420,000. I have never heard a room go that quiet. I've worked nights in a hospital. I know quiet. Trevor said, What? My mother's cup stopped halfway to her mouth and stayed there. My father stood up. That's not possible. You live on Social Security. I live on what I need, Grandpa said. Vance clicked to the next slide. Index funds, $16,000,001. Credit union and CDs, $910,000. House, $410,000. He walked them through the laundromats, the storage yards, the 2011 to 2016 sales, the $4.5 million after taxes, the 14 years since. My father was pacing. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why would you need to know? Because I'm your son. We could have helped you manage it. Manage it, Grandpa repeated. He let the words sit there. My father stopped pacing. Vance said, Shall I continue to distribution? Go on. He opened the blue folder. To Claire Elizabeth Bennett, $12,500,000. To the Ohio Palliative Care Coalition, $2,800,000. To Akron General's Respiratory Therapy Training Program, 1,000,002. To Douglas Bennett, Marianne Bennett, and Trevor Bennett, nothing. 9 seconds. I counted them, because at that point counting was the only thing my brain could do again. Then Trevor came out of the couch like it had ejected him. This is a joke. This is actually a joke. My mother's face folded up. Dad, we're your family. My father turned on me. Did you know about this? I didn't say anything. I sat with my hands in my lap. She got in his head, Trevor said, pointing at me across the coffee table. She's been alone with him for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And suddenly... Sit down, Vance said. No, this is... Trevor. Grandpa didn't raise his voice at all. He didn't have to. Sit down. He sat. My mother had a tissue out of her purse before I saw her reach for it. Dad, I have taken care of you for 29 years. She was here 12 days. Yes, Grandpa said. 12 days. And I'd never been asked how I was feeling in the first 29. Vance held up a hand. I'm not finished. Everyone stopped. There is a condition, he said. Ms. Bennett has been granted authority to modify this distribution at her sole discretion. My father's head came around so fast I heard his collar move. Modify how? If Douglas, Marianne, or Trevor Bennett complete certain requirements within 365 days, Ms. Bennett may, if she chooses, allocate up to $400,000 to each. It is not automatic. It is not appealable. My mother's hand came down on top of mine so fast I flinched. Claire, sweetheart, you'll take care of us, right? I took my hand back. I haven't decided, I said. And that was the moment, right there. I watched every one of them understand, all at once, that they had no leverage over me, not one thing. For the first time in 3 decades, I was not a chair they could move. The next 20 minutes were noise. I'll spare you most of it. My mother sobbing without a tissue by the end. My father saying I was 30 and didn't know how to manage that kind of money, which was rich from a man who financed a boat in 2019. Trevor saying, I'm his only grandson, 4 separate times, like the word only was going to start meaning something if he said it enough. And me on the couch, saying nothing, which they found unbearable. Say something, my mother screamed at me. Tell them what you did. Then Grandpa raised his hand about 6 inches off the arm of the chair, and the room shut up. He reached down beside the chair and came up with a notebook. Brown, soft, the corners gone round. He put on his glasses and opened it to a page he had marked. November 14th, 2021, he read. Marianne calls Claire and tells her I'm sick so the 3 of you can go to Charleston. I had a cough. It lasted a day and a half. Claire lost a cabin she'd paid for and 3 shifts she'd worked to get. My mother opened her mouth. He didn't look up. June 4th, 2023. You tell her I have an appointment on the 12th and I need a driver. 19 minutes, Marianne. 19 minutes and then 8 days when not one of you picked up a phone and said there's room. He turned the page. March 14th, 2024. Your daughter is in her best friend's wedding. She has the dress. You give her seat at the Rothman thing to your son because there's a job in it, and then you tell her to call that girl and lie about my health. He looked up then. I was on Mosquito Lake that day. I caught 4 walleye. Your daughter lied to her best friend for me, and I wasn't even in the state. Trevor said, Grandpa, I'm not finished. He closed the notebook and set it on his knee. And then this Christmas, $29,000, and you left her a note on the back of a grocery receipt. You didn't ask. You told. You have never once asked. Dad, we didn't mean... Yes, you did. And that was the only time he raised his voice, and it went through that house like a dropped pan. You have meant it for 9 years. You decided she didn't count because her work doesn't pay, and because it isn't a corner office, and because she picked people over money, and every year you got a little more comfortable about it. He got up, slow, with the arm of the chair, but he got up. He pointed at my father. You have asked her about her job one time. At my mother. You have never thanked her for a single hour. At Trevor. And you have never noticed she's in the room unless you needed something out of it. Nobody said anything. My mother was crying, and for once I couldn't tell if it was real. He sat back down and his voice went ordinary again, which was somehow worse. Harold, read them the conditions. Vance opened the red folder. Each of you must complete all 3 within 365 days. First, 90 consecutive days of hands-on caregiving, minimum 3 hours per day at a licensed facility. Direct patient care only, not administration, not fundraising, not board service. Missing a day resets the count. Trevor made a sound. Second, a handwritten account, delivered through me, listing every occasion on which you excluded Ms. Bennett with dates. Not an apology, an inventory. If your list does not match Mr. Bennett's, and he has kept one, it will be returned to you once, only once. Third, you will each personally contact one person Ms. Bennett lost as a result of your choices and tell that person the truth about what happened. Names to be provided by Ms. Bennett at her discretion, if she chooses to provide any at all. On completion, Ms. Bennett may allocate up to $400,000 to each of you, or nothing. Her decision is final. Trevor stared at him. So we beg. No, Grandpa said. You find out whether you'd do any of it if there wasn't money in it. Because that's the only question I've got left. Vance stayed after they'd scattered to different corners of the house to make phone calls. He came up and knocked on my door at 12:30 and handed me a second envelope, a heavy cream-colored one, and then he sat in my desk chair and walked me through 18 pages while I sat on the edge of a twin bed I'd slept in as a child. $4 million liquid within 30 days of probate, 8.5 in trust, and I am the sole trustee, which he explained means the trust exists to protect it from other people and not from me. He scrolled to Article 4 and turned the screen so I could read it myself. To my son Douglas, my daughter-in-law Marianne, and my grandson Trevor, I leave nothing. This is not spite. Douglas earns $162,000 a year. Marianne earns $88,000. Trevor earned $240,000 last year and will earn more. Between you, you clear near $500,000 annually. You have never needed $1 of mine, and you never will. What you needed was to learn that a person's worth is not their salary, and I watched you teach my granddaughter the opposite for 9 years. You called her work that job. You called her brother's work his career. You sent one child to Kyoto and left the other one with a note. I waited 9 years to see if you'd notice on your own. You did not. I am not leaving my money to Claire to punish you. I'm leaving it to her because she's the only one of you I'd want in the room at the end. If that feels like punishment, sit with the question of why. I read it twice. My throat closed up on the second pass. He wrote this? Every word, Vance said. I fixed the commas. He left. I opened the cream envelope. Claire, my dear, by now you know you're rich. I want to be clear that I didn't make you rich. I just made it visible. I have watched your father skip past your accomplishments to get to your brothers. I have watched your mother measure you against other people's daughters out loud, at the table, while you were sitting at it. I have watched Trevor treat you like the help, and I have watched you take all of it with more grace than I have ever had in my body. If somebody had done to me 1/10 of what they did to you, I'd have burned that house down in 1998. You never asked to be noticed. You just kept showing up. So here's what I'm actually giving you, and it isn't the money. I'm giving you the say. Your whole life, they decided for you. Where you'd be, what you'd give up, who you'd lie to. Now you decide, and I want you to understand that you can decide anything, including nothing, and you'll still be the best of us. They'll tell you family is family. Ask them where they were at Christmas. One more thing. The money going to the Palliative Care Coalition is designated to start a fund, and I've put your name on it. I want your name on a building where people learn to sit with the dying, because it's not the low work, Claire. It's the last work. It's the only one that can't be undone. Thank you for teaching me that. It took me 83 years and 12 days. Grandpa, I sat on that bed with the letter in my lap, and downstairs I could hear my mother crying and my father's voice going low and hard, and Trevor on the phone with somebody, saying the word contest. And up there, for the first time in my life, I felt something I can only describe as quiet on purpose. I had a year. Here's what the year looked like. They found 3 attorneys in 11 days. The first one told my father the capacity evaluations were airtight and he had no case. The second one asked whether I had controlled Grandpa's finances, isolated him from the family, or handled his accounts, and when the answer to all of it was no, she asked how the family had spent the 2 weeks in question, and my father apparently stopped talking. The third one told them a contest would cost between $60,000 and $140,000 with a low single-digit chance, and that the family's own pattern of exclusion would be the other side's best evidence. They spent about $2,400 in a week to be told the same thing 3 times. Then my father sent an email to the extended family. My aunt forwarded it to me within the hour. Subject: strategy. Legally, we can't move, but Claire is still our daughter. She'll come around if we handle this right. We do the 90 days, we write the lists, we make the calls, and we're looking at $400 each. It's not what it should be, but it's not nothing. Don't discuss this with Claire. Don't discuss this with Claire. I forwarded it to Vance with 2 words. For file. He wrote back, received. The 90 days started February 1st. Trevor picked a facility in Columbus and lasted until day 38. When he missed a Tuesday because of a closing dinner, he started over on March 12th. He got to day 61 and missed a Saturday. He started over again on May 20th, and he actually made it, 90 consecutive days, finishing August 17th, and I want to give him that. He did it. The supervisor's evaluation, which Vance had arranged for me to receive if I asked, and I asked, said this: Mr. Bennett performs assigned tasks adequately. He asked on 3 occasions whether travel time counts toward the daily minimum. It does not. On June 4th, a resident's daughter reported that he told her he was doing this for legal reasons. He is punctual and he is competent, and there is no warmth in it. My mother chose a place in Solon and made it on her 2nd attempt, finishing October 2nd. Her evaluation said she was frequently on her phone, that she asked the day count aloud roughly every week, and that she was skilled at feeding and slow to bathe. My father lasted the longest on the first try and never restarted, 90 straight days, February 10th to May 10th, and I'll be honest, I thought that meant something. Then I read his evaluation. He requested reassignment away from personal care 9 times. He was denied 9 times. He did what was asked and not one thing that wasn't. Staff noted he did not learn the residents' names. 90 days. 270 hours each, minimum. Not one of them learned a name. The lists came in September. Trevor's had 4 entries and 2 of them were wrong. My mother's had 11 and 6 of them included the words, but at the time. My father's had 19, which was almost complete, and at the bottom he had written, I have listed these as required. I would note that Claire never said she minded. I read that sentence about 9 times. Never said she minded. I was 17 the first time I was left home. 17. He'd had 13 years to notice, and his defense was that I'd been well behaved about it. The calls were the last condition, and I thought a long time about whether to give them any names. In the end, I gave them 1 each. I gave my father Priya's number. He called her in November. She called me an hour later, and the first thing she said before hello was, Claire, he read it. What? He read it, babe. Off a paper. I could hear him turning it over. Grandpa turned 84 in October. I hired an aide to come 3 mornings a week, and he complained about it for about a month and then started saving her the crossword. I bought a condo in Willoughby in the spring. 2 bedrooms, wood floors, a balcony you can just barely see the lake from if you lean. $390,000, cash, no mortgage, no debt. And the strangest part of the whole year was standing in it the first night with no furniture and realizing that nothing in that room could be taken from me by a phone call. I kept working. 2 shifts a week at St. Albans. People ask why, and I don't really have a better answer than the one I gave Grandpa, which is that the money paid off the parts of my life that were logistics, and it couldn't touch the part that was actually mine. I met somebody in June, Marcus. He's a physical therapist at a rehab place and mentor, and we met over a patient we were both trying to get out of a chair. I told him about the money in September on the 6th date, badly, in a parking lot. He was quiet for a second, and then he said, Okay, you're still not picking the restaurant. You have terrible taste. I told Grandpa that line, and he laughed until he had to take his glasses off. On January 3rd, 2026, exactly 1 year later, I called a meeting at Vance's office. Same conference room. They came in dressed for it, my father in a suit, my mother in the blue dress she wears to funerals and weddings both, Trevor in a jacket with no tie, which for Trevor is humility. They were nervous, and under the nervous, they were hopeful. That's the part I wasn't ready for. They actually thought they'd done it. Vance said, Ms. Bennett has reviewed the compliance records, the written accounts, the facility evaluations, and the third-party confirmations. She's prepared to render her decision. I slid one page across the table. My father picked it up. His face did something I'd never seen it do. Douglas Bennett, 0. Marianne Bennett, 0. Trevor Bennett, 0. My mother said, "Claire, you can't." "I can," I said. "It's done." Trevor's hand came down on the table hard enough to move the water glasses. "We did every single thing you asked. You did every single thing the will required," I said. And my voice came out level, which surprised me, because it hadn't been level in rehearsal. 90 days, not 91. Nobody stayed an extra day. Nobody learned a name. You listed dates because a lawyer told you to, and Dad still put a sentence at the bottom explaining that I never complained about it. I stood up. "For 9 years, you gave me the minimum. The smallest amount of attention you could get away with and still call yourselves a family at Christmas. You didn't do anything cruel. That's the thing people never understand about it. You were never cruel. You were just efficient." I picked up my bag. "So I'm giving you exactly what you gave me, the minimum," which turns out to be nothing at all. My mother was crying, and I think that time it was real, and I found that it didn't do anything to me, and that was the strangest discovery of the whole year. Trevor said, "You can't do this. We're your family." I stopped in the doorway. "No," I said. "You're people I'm related to. That's a different thing, and I only found out last Christmas." I went to Grandpa's on the first Sunday in July with white daisies, because he thinks flowers you have to fuss over are a scam. He was in the chair, same chair, 84 now, still walking his 1.5 miles, still fixing things that should be thrown away. I showed him pictures of the condo and pictures of Marcus and a stack of 3 letters from the first round of the fund. 10 students, 12,000 each. One of them was a woman named Renata, who was 46 and going back to school after 19 years of taking care of her mother, and she wrote to me that she wanted to do professionally what she'd been doing for free, and I had to put that one down halfway through. Grandpa read all 3, slow. "They're going to be good at it," he said. "I think so." He set them on his knee and looked at me for a while. "Claire, can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Are you happy?" The same question, same room, same chair. 19 months later. Last time I'd said I know what fine is. "Yeah, Grandpa," I said. "I am." He reached over and took my hand. His grip isn't what it was. It's still steady. "You know what I see when I look at you now?" "What?" "Somebody who picked herself," he said. "That's the hardest thing there is. Most people never get around to it." We sat there a while. The light came through the front window the way it does at 5 in July, all the way across the floor. At the door he hugged me, the long kind, and said into my shoulder, "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me I got it right." I drove home with the windows down. My phone buzzed at a light. Marcus, asking if I wanted to eat at his place because he'd bought too much fish. And at that light, I caught my own eyes in the mirror, and the woman looking back was not the one who sat in a parking structure at 7 in the morning and let somebody hang up on her Christmas. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. It was never about $17 million. My family thinks it was, and they'll think that for the rest of their lives. And that's honestly the saddest part of this whole story. It was about a note on the back of a grocery receipt. It was about 24 words that didn't include please or thank you or love. It was about being the person everyone counts on and nobody counts. You can't buy that back. You can't volunteer it back in 90 days. You can't write it down in a list with dates on it. You can only walk away from it. And it took me 30 years and 1 Christmas and 1 old man in a rocking chair to learn that walking away isn't losing your family. Sometimes it's the first time you've ever chosen one.